Hey all, welcome back to the lectures on general medicine and physiology. We were discussing respiratory system, and in respiratory system the next topic we're going to discuss is about the chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Okay, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Now, one disease is missing here. Is it a disease? I'll just add it on. Okay, now we studied asthma, and asthma was usually chronic. It's a chronic inflammation, but it is reversible, and this main difference is that it's always chronic. There is no acute form. One. Second thing is that it is not reversible. Okay, it is not reversible. It's very later on we'll see what can reverse it, or the only possible thing which can reverse it. In asthma we saw that bronchodilators can reverse it, isn't it? But in this case we said bronchodilators, though can be used for the treatment, cannot reverse the condition completely. Okay, now so let us start. In chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, it includes two basic diseases. One is chronic bronchitis, chronic bronchitis, and the second is, I know many of you will be very familiar with this, and the second is emphysema. So what is bronchitis? What is emphysema? Bronchitis, inflammation of bronchi. So this is what is the bronchi. Okay, so the inflammation of this particular region is what is the bronchitis. And what is emphysema? It's a swelling, okay, or enlargement. And enlargement of what? Enlargement of this region, okay, the alveoli. Okay, we'll discuss into the mechanism in a little bit detail later on. So basically the terminologies, one is bronchitis, the second is emphysema, which is the swelling part. Okay, the other is inflammation part. Okay, there is inflammation and increased secretion of mucus in bronchitis. Okay, now let us start with chronic bronchitis in detail. So coming on to chronic bronchitis, the first thing definitely we have to understand what is the definition of chronic bronchitis. So first thing, now there's a difference between chronic bronchitis and emphysema at the base level. One is inflammation, other is swelling of the alveoli. Okay, alveoli. Now, but chronic bronchitis is defined as based on clinical basis. So this is basically, it's defined and diagnosed on clinical basis, and this is defined on a pathological basis. Okay, that is, we have to need a microscopic diagnosis for this, whereas this can be diagnosed clinically. So what I want to tell you is that the definition, it's defined. So basically it's defined and it is diagnosed clinically as well. Okay, it's defined clinically, it's diagnosed clinically. So it's defined clinically as the patient who's having productive cough, for at least 3 or greater than 3. Okay, 3 consecutive months in 2 successive years. So if he's having this year, he should also have next year, not after that. Okay, 2 successive years. Okay, so this is very important in definition. So what was that? Productive. First thing to know. Okay, productive cough for at least 3 or greater than 3 consecutive months to 2 successive years. So this is the definition. If a patient had this, okay, and definitely, okay, other causes should be excluded, like bronchiectasis or chronic asthma, which can also produce a kind of cough, but not as severe as chronic bronchitis. Even emphysema can also produce this, but the most severe productive kind of cough for this long duration is always it's bronchitis. Okay, now what is the pathology which is related to this chronic bronchitis? Basically, you know that it's seen in smokers, whether it's bronchitis or emphysema. This particular lesion is definitely seen in smokers. Okay, so let us see what happens. This smoke is coming into the lungs, okay, and it is entering into the bronchi. What happens is there is inflammation. Okay, due to this there is inflammation. Okay, and due to this inflammation, what happens is the glands, the mucus glands in this particular region gets hypertrophied. Okay, the mucus gland in this region, just coming onto this picture, see this region, this is the mucus glands. So this is the normal mucus glands. Okay, these normal mucus glands, they get hypertrophied and they synthesize, so they get hypertrophied. Okay, they get hypertrophied, increase in size. So they get hypertrophied and they start secreting a lot of mucus on top. Okay, from here the mucus is secreted and they have ducts. Okay, so that's why the mucus will come onto the top. So this will cause the productive cough. Okay, because of the mucus being secreted. Okay, this causes the productive cough. This is the basic mechanism of the what is known as the bronchitis. Basically, it's the production of the mucus in the gland due to hypertrophy, and this production of this particular mucus will prevent the air exchange. So imagine this is the bronchus we are talking about. Okay, imagine this is the bronchus. Okay, so if there is, imagine there is hypertrophy and mucus secreted, this is mucus. So what will happen? There is an obstruction, isn't it? Even like it's very small. Okay, it's not as large as what you can see here. It's very small spaces. So there is obstruction of airflow taking place here. It's the air cannot flow. So that's the reason which produces a particular problem of or symptoms. But the main thing which is associated with this is the production of the mucus and a productive cough. Okay, so the major symptom associated with bronchitis is cough. Okay, more than dyspnea. We will see that in emphysema that dyspnea is much more prominent, and I'll tell you the reason for that. But here the major problem is productive cough more than the dyspnea. Here the dyspnea is very mild kind of thing. Okay, so hope you got the pathophysiology. It's basically the hypertrophy of, sorry, I forgot, okay, there was a small mistake. It's hyperplasia. Okay, it's hyperplasia. These terms are confusing, isn't it? So it's basically hyperplasia of the, not hypertrophy, it's hyperplasia. Okay, so it's hyperplasia of the mucus glands, and definitely this mucus secretion is increased. Now what happens when there is mucus the hyperplasia of mucus glands? The thickness of this particular region will increase. So imagine this is the entire thickness of the bronchial wall. Okay, imagine this is the total thickness of the bronchial wall. So, and this the red one is the thickness of the mucus glands. So we have got a ratio of this thickness B C, that is this particular this region BC divided by, okay, the entire thickness. Okay, this entire thickness, so which is the AC. Okay, AD, sorry, AD. So this D, this is A. Okay, it's not very important to know the letters, but what mainly it means here is the hyperplasia of the mucus glands. So if you see this ratio, normally it is 0.4. Okay, it is should be less than 0.4 or less than 0.4. But now, so this is a case where we don't have any kind of hyperplasia, isn't it? In that case only you will get this. Okay, this is basically this thickness. Okay, this thickness divided by the total thickness. Okay, now imagine there is, what I told you was hyperplasia. Okay, there's a huge hyperplasia, just imagine. So what happens? This ratio will change, isn't it? Because now the thickness we consider is from here to here, isn't it? So this ratio will become greater than 0.4, and to be very specific, or typically greater than 0.5 is more diagnostic. Okay, so this ratio is known as a specific name, RAID index. RAID index. Okay, and RAID index is used for the diagnosis of bronchitis. Remember that could be the question. Okay, you study everything, what is RAID index and all, and you forget what is it used for. So remember, it's used for chronic bronchitis diagnosis. Okay, and it is diagnostic when it is greater than 0.5. Okay, some books say that greater than 0.4. So typically, to be very correct, it is greater than 0.5, because 0.4 is normal, slightly increase no problem, but an increase above 0.5 is definitely diagnostic. So two things we studied. One was definition, isn't it? The definition part, the productive cough, 3 consecutive. So now, which is more specific in diagnosis? Is this clinical diagnosis better or the pathologic diagnosis better? It's the clinical. Again, for chronic bronchitis, clinical diagnosis is more important than the RAID index. Though RAID index is important, more important is the what? Clinical diagnosis. So hope you got what is happening, what is mucus gland hyperplasia, what is happening in this, and now it's an obstruction, isn't it? So just to come back, okay, we will start by drawing a chart of chronic bronchitis, and we'll discuss that later on. We'll compare it with emphysema. Okay, so the definition part, okay, definition part, we said it is much more clinical, isn't it? That's the first part we said. Now second thing, so now go for the definition. What was it? At least 3 consecutive months in 2 consecutive years and all those things. Okay, now what is a predominant symptom? It is cough. The predominant symptom is cough, remember that, and that too a productive cough with purulent sputum. Okay, so this is very, very important. Productive cough which is with purulent sputum, okay, and very mild dyspnea. Dyspnea is very mild, as I told you. Now the third part is the patient will have which type of respiratory failure? Type 1 or type 2? Obstruction is associated with type 2 respiratory failure. Why? We studied this before already, isn't it? Why is it associated with the type 2? Because it is blocking the airway. Type 2 is blocking the airway. Type 1 was blocking the air exchange. So emphysema will be type 1. Okay, and this blockage will be type 2. And we studied if there is a blockage. Okay, if there is a blockage, means definitely PO2 will come down, no doubt, but PCO2 will increase, isn't it? We studied that already, because when there is a blockage, PCO2 cannot escape. Okay, so there is PCO2 is increasing in type 2 failure. Now so that is type 2 failure. Now at one particular stage, the PCO2 in the blood, so let us draw the blood capillaries like this. Okay, it's going through the lungs. Now the PCO2 in the blood will increase to such a high level that the patient will start developing cyanosis. Okay, hope you understood why is PCO2 increasing in type 2. Type 1 there is just exchange problem, oxygen exchange problem, hypoxia. Okay, there is nothing related to carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide will easily dissolve and go out, no problem. But here it's obstruction, it's the escape of anything is blocked. So escape of carbon dioxide is also blocked, which can lead to increased PCO2. And this increased PCO2 can result in what is known as cyanosis. Okay, cyanosis. And this gives the typical name for this particular disease. What is that? Blue blotter, isn't it? Because of this cyanosis. Sorry, blue, not blotter, it's blue botter. Okay, blue botter, that is because of cyanosis. And why is cyanosis? Because of hypercapnia. Remember that it is due to hypercapnia, increased carbon dioxide. Okay, hypercapnia. Okay, and these patients are frequently obese. Okay, so this is one very typical finding, which is important when comparing with emphysema, because these people are very like thin people. Okay, now coming on to pulmonary function test, you know that there is FEV1. So okay, before that, what happens to the vital capacity? What happens to the forced vital capacity? Definitely it will come down because there is obstruction. So FVC will decrease. Okay, and the forced vital capacity in the first second is known as what? FEV1. Okay, FEV1. Okay, which will increase further. So forced vital capacity means the entire period, okay, of respiration, inspiration and expiration, whereas FEV1 is expiration in the first second. So that will increase further in this disease. So that means this particular ratio of FEV1 by FVC will definitely decrease, no doubt in that. Okay, now one very important terminology I want to introduce to you. Okay, I'll introduce when we discuss the emphysema. Okay, the further part I'll discuss when we discuss the emphysema. So the typical features, are very important. One is the diagnosis is clinical. Okay, then second is cough is the predominant symptom, which is productive and purulent sputum. Type 2 respiratory failure because there is obstruction. Okay, there is respiration being blocked. Okay, it's not just gas exchange, and as respiration is blocked, there is increased carbon dioxide, which can cause cyanosis and blue waters. Okay, then obesity, the patient will be obese, and definitely FEV1 by FVC will decrease. So that was about chronic bronchitis. Now let us discuss the next part, which is the emphysema. Okay, emphysema, which is another type of the COPD, isn't it? And as I told you, the problem here is nothing related to blockage or anything. It is what? Now the problem here is basically, again, smoke is coming, but it's coming deeper, okay, into the alveoli, and in the alveoli the mechanism is different. If it reaches bronchi, it's and it is being there, then basically what is happening is mucus gland hyperplasia and production of mucus. Okay, now here it's slightly different, though the same thing is there, but now here we have got some macrophages. Okay, macrophages and other inflammatory cells, and this macrophages will release elastase. I've discussed this already before. It will release elastase. So just imagine these are the elastases. Okay, hope you're seeing this is the elastase. Okay, and this elastase will destroy or will cause destruction of what is the elastase on the lung alveoli. So imagine there is elastase here. Okay, and this elastase, sorry, not elastase, elastic fibers here. So this elastic fibers, okay, are being destroyed. Okay, this the dark blue is destroyed elastic fibers. Now what happens if there is destroyed elastic fibers? Not just there, even here. Okay, not in even the entry part also. So all these areas, they will destroy the elastic fibers. So the elastic recoil and elastic expansion, that is, over expansion will take place, over contraction or over collapse will also take place. So whenever air is coming through it, okay, just imagine this is air is coming through it. Usually what happens? It will not expand too much, nor it will contract too much. There will be a limit for both. Okay, but in case when there is destruction of this elastase, what happens is when the air is coming in, okay, when the air is coming in, it will expand too much, and when air is going out, it will collapse completely. So this was a big problem. Okay, so this is what basically the emphysema is. Okay, basically elastase production, and by definition we will see what is there. We said it is basically what? It is pathological definition, pathological. So what we saw was elastase being produced, and it caused what? Destruction of elastic fibers. So it causes the destruction, dilation. So the typical terminology is dilation and destruction. So this is what the definition is: dilation and destruction of air spaces distal to terminal bronchioles. That is, basically we're talking about alveoli, distal to terminal bronchioles. Okay, so this is what the typical problem associated, that is dilation and destruction of air spaces because of the destruction of collagen. So what happens is over dilation and over collapse happens. Okay, when air enters, it over dilates, and if air goes back, it over collapses. Okay, now what is the predominant symptom here? We said it is dyspnea. Why is it dyspnea? Because it's collapsing. It's completely collapsing. It is becoming like the normal, this, imagine, okay, I'll draw it here. If this is normal alveoli, okay, the normal alveoli, what happens is it collapses to a very huge extent, to this level, like this. So will the gas exchange properly take place? No, the gas exchange will not take place. So due to this, patient is having dyspnea. Okay, in the earlier part, the gas exchange, there was in the bronchitis, though there was blockage, the gas exchange did take place, so there was no dyspnea. Here the predominant symptom is dyspnea, though there is minimal cough. Okay, so remember this, very important. The predominant symptom is dyspnea. Now, will there be cyanosis? No, because there is type 1 respiratory failure. So there is no increase in carbon dioxide, isn't it? So there is no cyanosis, no cyanosis. And now this patients will have a typical pursed lip breathing. Okay, and now I'll tell you how it looks like. Pursed lip breathing. Now see this image. Now this patient, see this is the pink puffer. Okay, so this patient, which is related to emphysema, this will have that close like a pursed mouth because he's having a big problem of dyspnea, isn't it? So he'll have a pursed lip breathing, whereas this guy will breathe very wide. Okay, and he will be obese. This guy will be very cachetic. The typical terminology we use here is cachetic. I don't know how to pronounce it, but or cachexic, whatever it is. Okay, so it is cachetic. Okay, that is very thin appearance. Okay, cachetic appearance or thin appearance, and it will not stop here. He'll have much more problem. He'll have a barrel shaped chest because of the expansion of the lungs. We studied when we discussed about the airway obstruction mechanisms and everything. We said that elastase destroyed the elastic fibers. So what happens is lung expanded and total lung capacity increased, isn't it? So if this is the lungs, it's slightly expanded. Okay, and this will have an expanded chest, that is known as a barrel chest. Okay, so the terminology is barrel chest. So he'll have a barrel chest, remember that. Then now there will be one more thing. So before cachetic, one more thing we have to discuss, which is paradoxical inward movement of the rib cage during inspiration. Inward movement of ribs during inspiration. Now just imagine, just you try to inspire, what is happening? Your rib cage is moving out or in? Your rib cage is moving outward, isn't it? So, but in this case, in this patient, we have a paradoxical inward movement because of the collapse of the alveoli in the immediately after, like even if there is an expansion of the lungs, we have got a barrel shaped chest. So now even there is air entry, there is collapsing of the lung alveoli, which produces a paradoxical inward movement. Okay, inward movement of the eye. If you want the typical mechanism, we have to use the Bernoulli's principle and all for that. That is, imagine this is the lung bronchioles and alveoli. Okay, we have got the alveoli out here. So if according to Bernoulli's principle, which we studied in physics in our school days, okay, what is it? That is, if there is a huge velocity, that is, if something is moving with very high velocity, the pressure around it will decrease. Okay, the pressure around it will decrease. This is applied in the spinning of cricket ball. This is applied in the railways, like we are asked to move away from the train. When the train is coming onto the railway station, we are asked to move away because it's coming with very high velocity, means the pressure falls around it. Okay, immediately next to it the pressure will fall and will be pushed inside. Okay, will be pushed into the going train. So similarly, the pressure is falling here. Okay, the pressure is falling here, decreasing. So what happens is there is an inward movement. Okay, when there is immediately after inspiration. So yeah, so I made the arrow mark was wrong. So during inspiration the air is flowing very fastly, so there is decrease in pressure. Okay, there is decrease in pressure, isn't it? So this pressure will cause it to collapse. Okay, come inward. So usually what we have is, we have got around it, we have got the elastase, and which will prevent all these things, no problem. But here there is no elastase, so that's the reason there is inward, paradoxical inward movement of the rib cage during inspiration. So this is manifested by the rib cage, okay, from the outside part. Okay, so this particular sign, it's very important to know that this is known as the Hoover's sign. Okay, Hoover's sign, very important. Okay, Hoover's sign is seen in what? In emphysema. Okay, and then finally we were talking about cachetic appearance. Okay, and will these things change? No, this will be same. So FEV1, because both are obstructive lung diseases, so FEV1 by FVC will be decreased, no doubt. But yes, I told you I'll introduce one term to you, that is diffusion capacity of the lung for carbon monoxide, DLCO. Okay, diffusion capacity of lung to carbon monoxide is decreased here, whereas this is normal. DLCO is normal. Why is it? Now diffusion capacity is decreased, okay, because the lung alveoli is collapsed. Even oxygen can't diffuse. Okay, oxygen can't diffuse, isn't it? So as a result, the diffusion capacity of oxygen is decreased. Now we are checking it by using another gas, which is carbon monoxide, which also will decrease because of the collapse of the alveoli, whereas no such problem is there in the bronchitis, so no issues. But here DLCO will come down. Okay, DLCO will come down. Now we said, what happened to the chest? It will expand, isn't it? Only during inspiration it will come out, but in general, because of the expansion of the lungs, I hope you are not confused. Now that is, normally the lungs will have lost its elastic capacity. It will expand, the pH will pull it out normally. Okay, but now what we are talking about was when the oxygen was coming in, because of this Bernoulli's principle, pressure decreased. Okay, as a result, during inspiration there is paradoxical movement. So in general, the lungs is larger only. Okay, and this, due to this larger lungs, what we have got is a barrel chest. Okay, barrel chest. And when you confirm this in X-ray, this barrel chest, when you look into an X-ray, you will see that there is increased anteroposterior diameter. So all these are possible questions. That's why I'm telling you this. Okay. Now people say that they don't have confidence in general medicine, so I'm increasing your confidence. So don't worry. Okay, increase anteroposterior diameter. Okay. So this is another very important point. Okay, one new student from a new batch asked me that who is taking the general medicine lecture. So because is it taken by general medicine specialist? I said no, it's taken by a dentist. Okay, it's taken by a dentist. So yes, we can explain it better than them. Okay, what is required for our level. Okay, if we are going to write the exam, we have to explain it. Okay, so the person who is writing the exam should be able to explain it to the others. Okay, so my plans, hopefully in future, I want every dentist to be trained in general medicine. Okay, I want every dentist to be trained in general medicine, in general surgery, basic things. Okay, this is my dream. The next dream, the first dream was this. Okay, and my next dream is to bring up a general medicine general understanding of every dentist, of every medical concept in the world. Okay, whatever. So we should be proudly saying that we are nothing less. Though we are not nothing less, but some people think that themselves, they have that inferiority feeling that we are something less because we don't know medicine. So yes, we should be then above them. Okay, don't be above them. That's not good. Let us be equal to them. Okay, that's much better terminology to use. So that is, so yeah, coming back, there is increased anteroposterior diameter in the chest because of this barrel chest appearance and expansion and everything of which is happening. So coming back once again, just a very quick review of this, what we have studied. It's a pathological definition, it's a pathological definition, and where we have got dilation and destruction of the air spaces distal to the terminal bronchiole. What we mean here is the alveoli, lung alveoli. Typical symptom is dyspnea because air exchange is not taking place. Type 1 respiratory failure, so no cyanosis, but there is pursed lip breathing because of this hypoxia. Then we have said that the elasticity of the lung has been lost, so there will be an expanded chest, so barrel chest, but there will be an Hoover's sign positive, paradoxical invert movement of the lungs during inspiration, and cachetic and this particular thing. But more importantly, DLCO will decrease and anteroposterior diameter will increase. In case of the bronchitis, the anteroposterior diameter will be normal. Okay, it will be normal. Okay, so this is basically the difference between chronic bronchitis and emphysema. And remember, they can confuse you by asking that if there is clubbing of fingers. No, clubbing of fingers won't be there. Okay, though there is cyanosis, no, especially in chronic bronchitis, nor in the chronic bronchitis, neither in the emphysema we have clubbing of fingers, not there. Okay, this is a very important point, because always cyanosis is associated with clubbing of fingers, but here there is cyanosis in chronic bronchitis, but there is no clubbing of fingers. Okay, and definitely in emphysema there is nothing like that. Now there are some pathogens. Okay, so there are some pathogens which can exacerbate COPD. So now we're coming on to much more. Okay, before that, okay, I want to tell you two different types of emphysema. Yes, two types of emphysema is there. Two types of emphysema. The first one is the centriacinar emphysema. Okay, centriacinar, and then we have got panacinar. It's a very simple concept. Okay, don't go for the name. Panacinar emphysema. Now, centriacinar means the acini. This is acini. The alveoli, the lung alveoli has got acini. So this is the acini. The central acini is being affected. Okay, centriacinar means the center acini. It's not going on to the distal part. This is the distal part, and this is the proximal part. Okay, more commonly the smoke which is coming will be dislodged in the central part, central acini. It won't go further. Okay, it won't go further into this area. It won't go. Okay, distally, more distal it won't go. It will just block out in this region. So as a result, this acini will be affected in smoking. So what does it mean? What is the conclusion? That is, centriacinar emphysema is that emphysema affecting the proximal part of the acini. Okay, proximal acini, or proximal part of the acini of the alveoli, whereas distal part is spared. Whereas the panacinar means, okay, the panacinar means it is entire, nothing is spared. It's completely being affected. Okay, the complete area is being, the entire acini is pan. Pan means what? Entire. So that panacinar means the entire, its acini is affected. That is uniformly the entire acini is being affected. Okay, now we said this is much more related to smoking. Centriacinar is much more related to smoking because the smoke doesn't go much further. Whereas panacinar is due to alpha antitrypsin deficiency. Okay, antitrypsin deficiency. Now always I think that I don't want to explain the mechanism, but somehow, okay, what is alpha antitrypsin? I told you previously that macrophages releases what? Elastase. Okay, now by mistake, imagine by mistake our body had some inflammation and macrophages released the elastase, but normally what will happen? It will destroy the elastase of lung and will get emphysema. But this doesn't happen in normal persons because we have got something known as alpha antitrypsin enzyme. Okay, alpha antitrypsin enzyme, because this alpha antitrypsin will destroy whatever elastase is there. Okay, it will destroy whatever elastase is there. So normal person doesn't get affected by emphysema. But if there is deficiency of this in itself, what will happen? This destruction won't take place, and we have this elastase, and which will cause emphysema. So that is why alpha antitrypsin deficiency causes panacinar, because it will just spread anywhere. It will not block any. It will not cause a particular area. The entire area will be affected. That is why it's a alpha antitrypsin deficiency, of which is common. Definitely smoking type is common, so this is more common. So they can ask you, alpha antitrypsin deficiency is seen in which type of emphysema? Alpha antitrypsin deficiency type is seen in panacinar emphysema. Centriacinar emphysema is seen in which patients? Smoking, those having the smoking. Okay, now one more thing. The centriacinar emphysema is much more seen in the upper lobes of the lung, whereas Pan-acinar is much more associated with the lower lobes. Okay, that's another difference. But more importantly, you have to remember this. This is a question which was asked. Alpha antitrypsin deficiency is seen in which type of emphysema? It is seen in the pan-acinar emphysema because a deficiency of this enzyme will affect entirely, not just a simple area. Now we were talking about there was some bacteria which will exacerbate COPD. Now we are generalizing things. We discussed bronchitis, emphysema separately and everything. Now we are generalizing things into the COPD. So exacerbate. There's some bacteria which can exacerbate COPD. This is one question which was asked for you, not for you, for the medical people. So just know it if you can. That is H. influenzae. Okay, H. influenzae. Most common organisms. Okay, then we have got Streptococcus pneumoniae. If you can't remember it, it's good. Otherwise, forget it. It's not very typical question which we used to get, but maybe this can be a bouncer for you. Okay, even if you don't attempt the bouncer, no problem. So Moraxella, the third is Moraxella catarrhalis. Okay, catarrhalis. So these are the three most common organisms, and usually they ask this question as exceptions. All of the following are bacteria exacerbating COPD except, and in that they will ask you anything like Streptococcus aureus, Staphylococcus aureus, Staphylococcus pyogenes, Streptococcus pyogenes, like that. So they can play in this region. So remember, it's Streptococcus pneumoniae which is causing it, and it's not any other Streptococci or Staphylococci. Remember that. Okay, and H. influenza and Moraxella catarrhalis. So that was about the organisms causing it. Now coming on to the next part, which is we are almost nearing the final part. So we studied there is something known as an index. Which was that index? Which is used for diagnosis of the bronchitis, RAID index. Now we have, like, I'm coming back to this because you will confuse it. Okay, it's chronic bronchitis and RAID index. Now we're going to have a severity classification whose name is also important, GOLD severity classification. So don't confuse it. So RAID index is for chronic bronchitis. Now we are coming on to GOLD severity classification. So what is that? GOLD severity classification. This is for bronchitis? No, isn't it? It is for emphysema. Is it? No, it is for COPD in general. It is for the classification of COPD. So this is one question it can ask you directly. GOLD severity classification is used for what? Bronchitis, emphysema, restrictive lung disease, COPD. So COPD is answer. Remember that. Now, do you want to know the details of it? Okay, if you don't want to, just forget it. But we have got 4 stages classification. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It's very simple basically. Okay, just listen. If you can remember it, it's good. If you can't, then it's fine. Okay, so we'll just draw a few columns very quickly, and we have got mild. So 4 means we'll have mild, moderate, severe, and definitely very severe. Very severe. So these are 4 severity classification. So this is what we are looking for, the severity part. Okay, and this is the stage, GOLD stage. So now what is GOLD? Are they talking about really something which is GOLD? No, it is Global Initiative for Lung Disease. Global Initiative for Lung Disease. Okay, Global Initiative for Lung Disease. So LD is lung disease and GO is Global Initiative. Okay, I is missing, isn't it? Anyway, it's GOLD classification is what is being told. Now let us see what is there. So for COPD in general, you know that FEV1 by FVC is less than 0.7. So it's the same everywhere. All the 4 cases, it is the same, less than 0.7. But more importantly, it is the next part which is really mattering in classification. That is FEV1. Okay, this was a ratio, FEV1 by FVC. FEV1 is what is most important. So FEV1 is greater than 80, greater than or equal to 80. It is mild. Now FEV1 is between 50 and 80. It is moderate. Okay. Now it is between 30 and 50. It is severe, and finally if it is less than 30 it is very severe. So what is really important is FEV1 greater than 80, FEV1 greater than or equal to 50, greater than or equal to 30, less than 30. Remember, like, forget about the second part. Okay, so forget the second part. It's just, if you know this number, you know that the other is the limit. Okay, now, so this is the classification: FEV1 greater than or equal to 80, FEV1 greater than or equal to 50, greater than or equal to 30, less than 30. Okay, so if you can remember it is fine. So it's not very difficult. 80, 50, 30, 30, and 130 is greater and other 30 is lesser. Okay, so that is gold severity classification of COPD and nothing else. It's gold severity classification of COPD. Now, coming on to the last part, how can you look for the lung volumes? We said FEV1, FEV by FVC and all. So how can you estimate the lung volumes? Okay, lung volumes. We studied in the previous classes in the physiology part, we studied that there is one is gas dilution technique, isn't it? Gas dilution technique. Or now, I think I have not used this term. More importantly is helium nitrogen dilution technique. Okay, I think this is very familiar, isn't it? I said you that this can be used for those cases where we have to assess the residual volume. Okay, because pyrometry won't help us to assess the residual volume. So now this is also used in case of any restrictive lung disease. Restrictive lung diseases. If you want to assess the lung volumes in restrictive lung diseases, it is good. Okay, and not in obstructive lung disease. Why? Not in obstructive. So what we see in obstructive lung disease is that we have this blockage, isn't it? We have this blockage. That means there is some air which is not going out. I told you that expiration is much more difficult. So some air is trapped. Okay, this air trapped cannot be assessed by gas dilution technique. You can't use air trapped to, like, we can't find out the trapped air in the gas dilution technique, though it's used for restrictive lung disease. So for obstructive lung disease, what is much more important is a technique known as body plethysmography. Body plethysmography, because it will measure the air entrapped. Okay, it will measure the air entrapped. Okay, or they use a typical term, trapped air in bullae. Okay, trapped air in bullae. Okay, so which of the following method is used for obstructive lung disease to find out the trapped air in bullae? Okay, definitely if it is obstructive lung disease, then there is trapped air in bullae. So that's the confusion they make by asking you trapped air in bullae and all. The answer is body plethysmography. Okay, so this is used for obstructive lung diseases. Okay, obstructive lung disease plus restrictive lung diseases, no problem. So that means this is only for the gas dilution technique is only for restrictive lung disease, whereas body plethysmography is for obstructive and restrictive. Okay, why obstructive? Because trapped air in the bubble is being assessed by body plethysmography. So if you can't remember anything, you just remember one. This body plethysmography is used for COPD, like for COPD or any obstructive lung disease, because it assesses the trapped air. Okay, so that's it. Now coming on to the last part, which is treatment of the bronchitis and emphysema. Now this is so we are talking about treatment of COPD. Now I told you this is not an reversible condition, this is an irreversible condition. So the first thing what we have to use is the stoppage of smoking. Stoppage of smoking. Okay, so they may ask you the first line of treatment in chronic bronchitis or emphysema or COPD is what? First line of treatment is what? It is stoppage of smoking. It is not bronchodilators. Okay, it is not oxygen therapy. It is nothing. The first line of treatment is first thing, stop the smoking. So that's the first line of treatment. Then after this first line of treatment, which is the stoppage of smoking, the second option or second thing what you have to go for is bronchodilators. Bronchodilators. Now this bronchodilators, will it improve the lung function? Okay, will it improve the lung function? No, in asthma, bronchodilators improved the lung function, but here no improvement in lung function, though there is symptomatic relief. Okay, there is no improvement in lung function because the problem is what? It's mucus or the collapse of the alveoli. It is not a typical contraction of the muscles of the airway, isn't it, which is there in asthma. Here it is not such muscle contraction. So there is no, though improvement of symptom is there, no improvement in lung function. Okay, no improvement in lung function. And so we come on to the next part. So what can cause improvement in lung function? It has been noted that only agent which can improve the lung function is oxygen therapy. So only agent to improve lung function. Other way to tell this, the only agent which can decrease the mortality in COPD is oxygen therapy. Remember that. Okay, it's not bronchodilators. Whereas when it comes to asthma, it is bronchodilators. It's the first line treatment. It is the one which is used to improve lung function. It is the one which is in decreased mortality. But here it is not bronchodilators. It is oxygen therapy, which is much more important and is the only agent which can improve the lung function. Another difference I want to tell you. In asthma, what was the agent of choice we used for the treatment? Beta-2 agonist, isn't it? Salbutamol, terbutaline, short-acting beta-2 agonist. But here we're using the other agent, which was that ipratropium bromide. That is parasympatho, that is anticholinergic, isn't it? Like parasympatholytic. So that is ipratropium bromide. We studied this. So here we're using ipratropium bromide as a first line drug after cessation of smoking, rather than salbutamol terbutaline. Why? Because this is long acting. So here the problem is chronic, not reversible. We can't reverse it quickly by giving it. So we have to use it for a longer period. Okay, or we have to use it for we have to use something which is long acting, because simply by giving it we won't get the reversed state. So use much more longer acting ipratropium bromide to treat. Okay, oxygen therapy is the only agent which can improve the lung function. And finally, one more thing, if you can remember it, we have got something known as lung volume reduction surgery. They may ask you this: lung volume reduction surgery is used for what? It's for emphysema and in general COPD. More importantly, emphysema. Okay, emphysema reduction surgery, because we said there is expansion of the lungs in emphysema, isn't it? So lung volume reduction surgery is used in emphysema typically. Okay, so this was general management of COPD. This is typically for emphysema, or more importantly for emphysema. So that's all about the COPD and bronchitis and emphysema. Okay, very quick review once again, just a very fast quick review on this. So we studied chronic bronchitis and emphysema. This is clinical, pathological. Chronic bronchitis definition, very typical. Okay, then what we have is the RAID index, which is just this, and 0.4, less than 0.4, greater than 0.5 is abnormal. Then the differences: clinical, cough is a major symptom, dyspnea is a major symptom here. Then type 2, type 1 respiratory failure on the other side. So when it's type 2 cyanosis, here there is no cyanosis, but there is post-lip breathing. Then this is obese, this is cachetic. Whereas this have got barrel chest, paradoxical inward movement, that is very, very important. Hoover's sign. Okay, Hoover's sign is seen in this. Then definitely both are having FeV1 by FVC decrease, but DLCO is decreased here. Carbon monoxide diffusion is decreased here, and there is increased anteroposterior diameter. Okay, then coming down, yes, clubbing of fingers is not a feature of either. Okay, two types of emphysema: centrilobular, pan-acinar. Okay, sorry, centri-acinar, pan-acinar. Centri-acinar means only the proximal part. This is everywhere. This is due to smoking. This is alpha antitrypsin deficiency. Okay, it's much more common and upper lobe. Okay, more common, so upper lobe. Okay, then coming on to the next part, the bacteria H. influenzae, S. pneumoniae Yes, it's pneumonia which is affecting the lungs definitely. Then Moraxella catarrhalis. Okay, Gold severity classification 80, 50, 30, 30. Okay, greater than 30, less than 30. Done. Then coming on to the lung volumes, how it can be assessed? Body plethysmography for what? Obstructive lung disease, because it can measure the trapped air in the bubble. Then coming on to the treatment of COPD, yes, the first line treatment is smoking cessation. Then you can go for bronchodilators, preferably ipratropium bromide, because it's long acting. Okay, but bronchodilators, no improvement in lung function. The only agent which can improve lung function is oxygen therapy, okay, and which can decrease the mortality. Finally, if you want to go for a surgery, there is lung volume reduction surgery in emphysema. So that's all for emphysema and chronic bronchitis. And what is remaining in this is ARDS, which is a small topic. The reason I'm taking this is because we had COVID, and COVID has got ARDS as a very typical feature, isn't it? So otherwise it would have been not required. So I'll just cover it up, ARDS, in the next session, and that's all will be for the respiratory system. Okay, so see you in the next session. Goodbye.